Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, I was very fortunate to finally connect with Mark Steele. We had a lengthy Zoom call. He brought up a great deal of information regarding 5G. I'm going to bring you that information in that conversation right now. His website is saveusnow.org.uk, and he is also on Gab at Mark Steele channel. He also says he's on Twitter. I would assume the same handle. But we talk about a great deal of things, specifically 5G and what is referred to as the slow kill. This is remarkably important. And I think it's certainly time, way past time, for us to get mobilized and share this information regarding 5G towers, why they were put up, what their true intent really is. And as you might expect, it has nothing to do with internet access or internet capability or broadband this or broadband that. It has nothing to do with that. It is a weapon. And it's a weapon that's, again, built intentionally to kill us. And we need to know that. So here is our discussion. Again, it was great having him on. Might have him back again in the future. He's always welcome. And give this conversation a listen, ladies and gentlemen, and share this episode where you can.
Let's get a bit of background first. Obviously, I was exposed to these type of weapon systems in the 80s. They go back a little bit further than that. And I was always aware of them. I was fortunate, as it happens, but one of the hobbies that I have, I've got a material sciences background, so I understand about fracture mechanics. But I always had a passion in weapon systems, battlefield scenarios, strategic, let's say, warfare, etc., etc. It's just a lot of people sort of have a strange, let's say, affinity with those particular types of things. And unfortunately, ever since I was a child, they had us down as a complete lunatic when I was a child, because one of the first awards I got, I was under 11-year-old. I was about 10 and a half, and I was pretty bright, and I won an award at school, and I was taken to a bookshop where Thorne's books in Newcastle, and I was asked to pick two books. I was given £7.50. I was with the deputy head, and I got intercontinental ballistic missiles and small arms. So you can imagine how this down as a bit of a strange head. Ever since I was a kid, I just had this. I had this strange interest in weapon systems, and I understood about the secret weapons, the Hitler weapons programs, the secret weapons programs, Operation Paperclip, Secret History of Silicon Valley. It was all the sort of thing I was very enthusiastic about understanding latest and greatest and some of the secret weapons programs. So when the Havana syndrome thing happened, I already knew that they used microwave radiation weapons. It wasn't an ultrasound weapon. I know about ultrasound weapons because I've been involved with that, as well as a number of subsea projects, directional torpedo, target acquisition weapon systems. So I had a base understanding of all of this equipment, but inexplicably, over many, many years. So a lot of it's serendipitous, which, as you know from the quantum field mechanics, there's no such thing as coincidence. It just doesn't happen. So these weren't coincidences. There was a reason why I had this, let's say, this interest, and there was a reason why I was fortunate to be in a number of different scenarios, research and development projects. I mean, I've built products from innovation, basically an invention and bring them to market. So understand about standards, regulatory bodies, and how you can only sell things in the marketplace if they're fully regulated and most certainly safe. It's extremely concerning to see some of the technologies coming out of Silicon Valley that most certainly they call them killer tech. They call them killer tech for a reason, because it'll kill you. A lot of these technologies, the virtual reality headset, some of my inventions, because I'm an inventor and a patent writer, some of my inventions, one of the main inventions I had was a binocular waveguide, and it was to mitigate optical radiation hazard for a head-up display weapon sight system. It was a very, very valuable patent. The intellectual property had some significant valuations on it. It's because it's the only way you can actually deliver a near-eye area visual system. You cannot project optical radiation into the eye. So where you see a number of these, Google Glass type device, Oculus Rift type device, these all came from the military. There was NASA developments where they were projecting an image directly onto retina. Now, optical radiation and the values of the photons in that part of the spectrum are extremely problematic to the eye. The 560 nanometers frequency, which you see in the Apache helicopter, so that's the reason why the weapon sight's green, is less biologically toxic, so it doesn't cause as much cellular death as what, let's say, a full spectrum would be, or infrared. Obviously, as you get into the blue light part of the spectrum, it gets very, very problematic and extremely toxic to the eye. And we know that, all the data, all the scientific data shows that about the 450 nanometers frequency, the blue light sort of in and around that area is extremely dangerous to eyesight. So it's pretty amazing to me how we had a lot of these technologies starting to come out. So I had a big understanding of this, probably better than most people, I would suggest, due to the fact that I was an inventor in this space. So I invent these products, the mitigation of directional weapon systems on a battlefield, specifically head-up displays. You need to have protection over the eyewear. You can't go into a battle space if you haven't got some type of protection. You'll see a lot of special forces who operate in forward operating bases. They'll have protective eyewear. Some of these guys don't know why they're wearing it. I can tell you why they're wearing it, because you've got somebody possibly looking at you with some electromagnetic radiation battlefield interrogation system, or even your own equipment. Your own equipment interrogate the battlefield can cause significant brain injury. Depends on the frequency, depends on the part of the spectrum it's operating at. So a lot of these technologies are extremely toxic. In fact, if you were to study brain injury in veterans, so people coming back from these battle spaces, you'll actually find they've actually got a brain injury, and this is one of the main reasons why they suffer this horrendous PTSD, where people say that they've seen something horrific on the battlefield. It was no more horrific than what's happened in the First World War, or some of the other wars. We didn't see anything near the amount of PTSD. And if you actually analyze these guys, you'll find that they actually have brain injuries, very similar to the brain injuries that were reported in the Havana embassy attack against the US embassy staff. So understand about electromagnetic radiation weapons. Now, how I came into this whole 5G thing, obviously the technical parameters. 5G's got two main technical parameters. One's densification, so that just means more radiation transmitters in a built-up city environment. Now, that is a program called soft kill. Because if I just build out lots and lots more of this ionized and non-ionized radiation frequencies in a cityscape, I'm going to see large increases in sickness and death, Parkinson's, stomach problems, people develop Crohn's disease, Parkinson's, cancers. So you're going to see what's called soft kill. The other element to it, if you look at antenna design, and this is the specifics of 5G as opposed to 4G, a 4G mast radiates its inverse square law. It radiates in all directions, and the radiation drops off significantly over very, very short space. So let's say a mobile phone only has to be a couple inches away from your head. You haven't got a significant problem from the radiation emission. The differentiator 5G uses an antenna design, and there's several different ways to cause an antenna so that it can emit a focused beam. So no different to the same, let's say, the same theoretical process as how a laser cuts stainless steel. So a laser will use an emission, a non-ionizing radiation emission, visible. It can be visible. It doesn't have to be visible. And what you can see from that is me cutting stainless steel. Now, where we get a problem with the scientific community, they'll tell you that there's not enough energy in that part of the spectrum. That's just pure bunkum. And I always refer back to lasers and how if these parts of the spectrum pose no risk to humans, how can I cut stainless steel with it? Simple as that. And I've had argument after argument after argument, and academics in particular will tell you that there's not enough energy in that part of the spectrum. It is a total and absolute load of nonsense. And the fact that I was involved in a number of projects that used high power non-ionizing radiation, which is pretty problematic, and this is why they make such let's say, clever weapon systems. Because I can see you behind, let's say, a reinforced concrete wall. I can see you, and I can focus a beam at you behind a wall. So you don't have any protection where normal kinetic munitions, you've actually got to break through a concrete wall. These things, I can kill you behind that wall. I can actually see you behind the wall and I can kill you. So that's why it makes them such a significant opponent on the battle space. But however, they have no purpose to be in a cityscape. Zero. There is absolutely no purpose to have directional beams in a cityscape. And how they're getting away with it, they're seeing it from machine to machine. So autonomous vehicles, you see this equipment situated in the top of streetlights, mainly streetlights. That's one of the main problematic areas because it's a sub-gigahertz frequency, can penetrate very deeply into the built-up urban environment. And this is the main weapons system. And there's a number of different weapons where, as long as I can cause focal, now I can do that with either using a dielectric lens. So I have some type of antenna that can cause focality. So I can have plate lenses with apertures in, or I can have an antenna, a high gain antenna, and have some dielectric property, maybe a small lens attached to it, which I can cause focality with. And there's also phased array, where you have an offset signal and you can then punch out a beam just depending on how you offset the signal. So you get this linear radiation emission, and the focality of it all depends how many elements you've got in phased array. So the more elements I have, the larger the antenna, the more elements, the more focus, the more focality I can get, and I can cause polarization and collimation of the radiation at your target. So I can see it and I can focus at it. And when they put 5G on in South Korea, obviously they set fire to about 5 separate cities. The South Koreans said it was a forest fire. That was absolute garbage. I mean, these cities were, hundreds of miles away from each other. And all of a sudden, when they switched 5G on, they just set fire to the electrical grid and burnt down the cities. It was a national emergency. And I realized then that they were going to have a problem with the electrical grids in the West, because we have aged electrical grids that have a problem with that. So there was going to have to be another avenue, another way to cause this depopulation agenda. I mean, it's in the intelligence documents. It tells you how many they're attempting to kill. It was how they were going to reach that sort of kill. And this is where I realized they would have to bring something else in. Now, there was a project that the DoD ran for tracking wet war on the battlefield. Nanoparticulate contaminants, these graphite ferrous oxide antennas, you inject them into a person, you can then track them, you can see them, you can monitor their biometrics, but then you can focus the beam at them. So let's say you lose a guy, you don't want to leave anybody behind because they're an asset to the enemy. So consequently, it allows you to actually focus a beam, a sub-gigahertz beam that have been causing a tonic seizure. So I can switch them off. So I can see if they're alive. If I can recover them, they're an asset to you. If I can recover them without too much of a problem, then you're going to try and recover them. But it's going to be problematic, and you're going to have to, let's say, expend more assets to recover them. It's better just to switch them off. So you just switch them off. So this project had been developed by the DoD, and unfortunately, that's the same kit that's in these COVID-19 vaccines. Now, obviously, the technology companies, they talk about, tracking people, biometrics, cryptocurrency. There's a number of different reasons. I mean, if you look at the Microsoft platform, the Azure platform, which is connected to a lot of the sub-gigahertz weapons in the streetlights, we've got evidence of that. This is in conjunction with Lockheed. So they have a battle space AI network system. So Azure is going to be AI. With no AI, what it'll do once they switch it on, it'll just kill all of whatever it can kill. It's pretty obvious what they're going to try and do. So that's where we are.
There's no doubt that the electromagnetic frequencies that exist, even with the wireless environments, and the more heavy the wireless environment is, in particular in big cities, certainly in tighter areas, is making people ill. Given all of that, going back to 2020, and it could be an education thing, or just a basic awareness thing, or it actually occurred big time during 2020. But here in the States, when they locked us down, what is it that I mean, they must have received some kind of an order where clearly it was time to put in these towers and put up these towers. So my question is who put the towers up and when did the towers start going up? Because I haven't actually seen anybody put a tower up. You just drive around and you're going, holy shit, look at all these towers. I didn't see these a few years back, but now they're here and it seems like there's more. And oh, look, there's another one and bang, bang, bang. So again, who's putting them up? What time of day are they going up? Things like that.
They put them up during the night, so they'll do the groundwork, the preparation, and they come up at night. The next minute they've got them up within 2 or 3 hours. They come in the middle of the night and they put these masts up. And the reason for that is they don't want anybody question the characters who are putting it up. A lot of them are white vans. They don't have any livery, so the companies that are behind it, some of them are linked with defence industry. We know Jacobs. There's a number of different defence contractors who've been installing this equipment. Now, I'm not saying that they know what the real plan is. A lot of them don't. A lot of them think it's a telecommunications network, which it can masquerade as a telecommunications network. But the fact that it can cause focality in air, and you see the reason, the excuse, let's say, or the enabler is telling technologists that these are for machine to machine, so autonomous vehicles. The autonomous vehicle narrative is how they're putting this equipment into streetlights. So the technologists behind it, they think it's like all weapons product developments are compartmentalized for a reason. So nobody really knows what's really going on. But there's only a very small number that actually have the full understand. It's a bit like electric cars. We've got this drive for electric vehicles. What the real purpose is, electric vehicles sitting on top of the electric motor, that causes sterilization and cancer. So it'll make people sick, but sterilizes your children at the same time. Now, obviously, the companies that are producing this equipment, they don't know that. However, someone in there does know that, because if you were developing any type of product where you've got these type of emissions, you most certainly would have to. It would be part of the protocol before you could bring the product to market. Number one, the fact that it's uninsurable for harm, that would be alarm bells. But you would have engineers there asking the question, what is the milligauss emission inside the cabin? And once you started measuring that, and I know Syntef did a study on these vehicles, and the maximum, the ICNIRP guideline, which obviously complete waste of time, by the way. ICNIRP's a captured industry agency, but they say the maximum I can sit in with electromagnetic radiation fields 30 minutes. So you've got taxi drivers riding around London in these London electric cabs. Those guys not getting the pensions. Those guys are going to get sick. Anybody getting in one, a pregnant woman, it increases miscarriage by about 300%. So you could miscarry in an electric vehicle. It most certainly sterilise young children, young boys and young girls, because young girls have the eggs inside them, which they will be DNA damaged, so that if they ever did get pregnant, they would either have a disabled child or possibly not have a child at all, where they would abort a totally destroyed fetus. So this is just it's absolutely, and it beggars belief, on the back of climate change. Climate's organised by the aerosol injection spraying and the ionospheric radiators. The defence industry across the world will have full control of the weather by 2025. So the whole climate change narrative is false. It's just totally false. It's fake. We know it's not carbon dioxide. They couldn't have picked a worse gas. It's a trace gas, 0.04 there. We produce about 3% of that. Most of it is taken up. The sea just swallows CO2. You could produce as much carbon dioxide as you want. The sea will just take it in. It captures it in crustacean shells, and then you get nice sandy beaches. So this whole carbon dioxide thing is a total and absolute smoke. That's a falsehood, and it is caused man-made climate change is caused by large amounts of electromagnetic radiation. For instance, Birmingham, I was just at a court case in Birmingham in England, and the city council have fitted 107,000 100 milliwatt transmitters to every streetlight. Now, the maximum I can expose you to ICNIRP guidelines is one milliwatt. It's a thermal at 61 electron volts. So there's a thermal impact there. That thermal impact, so we've got, these are 100 milliwatt transmitters. Each one has a 10-mile footprint in the built-up urban environment because they're sub-gigahertz. They basically see through everything. So it's an urban radar. It's an illegal urban radar technology. It can see right the way through the cityscape. They're 100 milliwatts each. They're 100 times more than the ICNIRP guideline. Each one's got a 10-mile footprint, and there's 107,000. So what they're basically doing in the city of Birmingham is that just microwaving everybody to death. And that's part of the program called soft kill. The hard kill elements, these same pieces of equipment have a plate lens with an aperture. It's got a small aperture which allows focality, and that focality, I'm pretty sure, is going to be used to target acquire the vaccinated and just eliminate them if and whenever the hard kill is required.
So you can remotely turn these up from some other location and just kick it on to a point where, again, it will immobilize a person.
Absolutely. Well, the operating platform, we know the same equipment and the operating platform in Cambridge, England, is Azure. And if you look at the Microsoft Azure platform, obviously it's all linked with this Gavi passport, Microsoft, antenna injection passport narrative. However, what it's really here to do is just to kill, because there will be people in these organisations who go, well, we'll track these people. It might be a little bit nefarious. What they may not know is this AI system, once it's totally switched on, it's going to execute every single person in that city who will not be able to escape it due to the fact that they've got these nanomaterial antennas inside them. So you can't hide. You could get yourself in a basement. You're not going to be able to hide from these weapons because I can see directly through to the basement. You're not going to be able to hide from them. I mean, you'd have to be a significant distance underground if you were to survive this particular attack.
Let me ask you about this too. You see again these towers popping up in school parking lots. You see them next to schools. I mean, it's pretty obvious as to why that's the case, given everything that you said and the things that I've read and whatever else, and what we know about what's going on. But when you see these towers pop up again in neighborhoods, like the openings of subdivisions or even in somebody's backyard, how is it that exchange happens? Do they knock on the front door of the person's home or the building and say, hi, we're here from Verizon, or we're here from some phone company, and what we want to do is we want to put up a tower in your yard. We'll pay you X amount of money if you allow us to do that. Is that okay? I mean, is that the exchange that takes place? They lease their own land out to one of these companies, and money is basically the deciding factor?
They already have a pre-planning, let's say, approval. So they've got pre-planned approval. They normally go through your local councils. They'll seek planning permission from a local council. The local council basically rubber stamp it. They've been told not to address the environmental health effects. They've only been told to address the aesthetics of a mast going up in an environment. Absolutely ridiculous situation that we're in. And then all of a sudden you'll get some company come along objecting to these masts. Unfortunately for the government, they've lost a number of cases in courts due to them not taking into consideration the environmental impact of these transmitters. However, councils, because they've been sent guidance, they've been given guidance from the government that you can't stop this happening. They're not stopping it happening, and obviously they're facilitating this murderous agenda. They're breaking the law. The law it basically is do no harm. I mean, I'm not exactly sure, but a lot of the laws in the US will be very, very similar. They're not that dissimilar from what they are in the United Kingdom. But the malicious installation, we have a thing here in the UK called the Social Care Act 2012. And that Social Care Act, it is incumbent upon all local authorities for the betterment of the health of the people in the area. And they specifically are told they have to protect the population from ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. they're allowing, so they're maliciously allowing transmitters that can be well over 100,000 times more powerful than a 4G mast to go up into a cityscape without any protection, no fences round it, well within the 50 meters. They're supposed to be 4G masts are supposed to be 50 meters away from a dwelling. So they're putting this equipment up, basically breaking the law, which is malicious in breach of the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act, because this would be the administering of a noxious substance to cause assault, murder, attempted murder, through the administering of a noxious substance. And obviously electromagnetic radiation is a noxious substance. That's why it's in the 2012 Social Care Act that you have to be protected from it. Well, also they're in breach of the Council of Europe 1815 resolution, which is the international court's decision on exposure to humans to electromagnetic radiations, and they came up with a chronic exposure rate of 200 millivolts. I mean, when the equipment was installed in Gateshead, we were on average, I would say, in people's bedrooms, 1200 millivolts. So you were 6 times over the International Criminal Courts. The International Courts had stated this was the international courts that were set up after the Second World War to hold, let's say, some of these nefarious regimes to account. And consequently, they came out. Now, I'm not saying 200 millivolts is safe. I would say more in and around 30 or less than 30. That would be less of a biological effect. There's a biological effect at 200. We averaged about 1,200 in Gateshead area. We had people as much as 3,500, and we had people having nosebleeds, women losing babies near full term. We had a total genocidal agenda going on. And that's when they took me to court to try and gag me. The state apparatus said I was a conspiracy theorist and I must be gagged. And unfortunately, they just got the wrong judge on the day. And they fabricated evidence against me in that court. We caught them throughout the whole, the whole morning session. It became pretty obvious to the judge in particular that it was basically a setup. And after lunch, he read my skeleton argument. And unfortunately for the counsel, he realised that I was an expert in this field. And he actually said so. And he basically said that the 5G risk must be debated. And this was a democracy and the public had a right to know. And unfortunately, there's never been any debate about 5G. They couldn't have the debate. And they most certainly can't actually do any safety analysis, any testing analysis of how safe it is, because it would fail. Due to the reach of these weapon systems, it is a weapon system, and it's just masquerading as a telecommunications network. Both elements of it, whether it be the densification, people will die. Now, I didn't have the evidence in 2018. We did have a small uptick in suicides. We had a small uptick in cancer deaths, heart attacks, and stroke. But we're talking about the 1 and 2%, which could be seen as an anomaly. Obviously, it was significant, but it wasn't significant enough. Now, across the West, all of these places where we've seen this type of radiation emitters installed will have, 20, 30, 40% increase in all-cause mortality. These transmitters cause flu-type symptoms, pneumonia-type symptoms. I mean, the whole coronavirus thing was just a cover for the installation of this equipment. And that equipment, just in its soft kill mode, not its hard kill mode. That hard kill was actually tested in Wuhan against the Chinese citizens in the Wuhan area, where you saw them being shot, where they basically you switch them off, causing a tonic seizure. Their nervous system just shuts down and they just drop in the street.
That was definitely green light go, I think. And we remember seeing that footage. It was awful. Again, a lot of people were saying it was a conspiracy theory, of course, and just not real, but it was certainly a conspiracy fact without a doubt. So again, what you're saying is basically when these things pop up, the city councils, mayor's offices, you name it, they've already made the decision to put these up because it's sold to them under the guise of being good for, internet or broadband connectivity or whatever else. And the private property owners don't have a say.
Private properties have very little say in relation to this, and this is why we need people to start taking action against local authorities. Your local authorities have been weaponized against you. Your government's been weaponized against you. And it's all been brought through these UN Resilient Cities agenda, the World Economic Forum, and what I call the International Terrorist Organization. They're driving this whole agenda against the populations, and we'll have some very, very dim and some very, very devious demonic forces within a number of these, agencies that are fully paid up to protect us. And what they're doing to actually install it, they're breaking the law. For instance, the LED streetlights, the 450 nanometers frequency is biologically toxic to all life. AMA, the Medical Association, did a report in 2016 which showed the dangers posed to the environment from these type of LEDs. And your local councils, your government, they've just went ahead. I mean, they're putting these LED lights now into vehicles. So when people are driving down the road, you've got a point light source. You've got these lamps directly going into your eye. That's very, very dangerous. I mean, in Barcelona, there was a study done in Barcelona, and in less than 3 years, the incidence of breast and prostate cancer doubled in Barcelona after the installation of these LED lights. And that was only in the 3-year period. And there was 42 institutions in Spain who carried out this study, and it was absolutely appalling. So this radiation is accumulative over time. So you can imagine within 3 years, you've doubled the breast and the prostate cancer. What's going to look like in 15 years' time? And we don't even know what the gestation period is from first exposure to this radiation and the peak event. We just don't, it could be 5 year, it could be 10 year, it could be 15 year. We could be seeing it a mass depopulation. Well, that's exactly what we are seeing. We're seeing a mass depopulation agenda, and it's just going to grow and grow and grow, because this type of radiation is accumulative, and the more you get, the more you die. So, and that's what we're seeing. We're already seeing those numbers. I mean, I wish I'd had this data, the data we have now, on this all-cause mortality in 2018, but unfortunately, we were just at the start of it. 5G sort of reared its head in about 2012, 2013 with a program called 3GPP. That was its inception. And as they just start to bring more and more of this technology in, and the more that you get, like these low emission zones, we've got low emission zones where they're causing the toxicity of the air. If I spray this radiation into an environment, I think it's in and around about 13 electron volts, I'll charge the air. So I'm spraying this radiation through the radar network. So the scanners that are scanning vehicles through your cityscapes, the scanners and the radar on the vehicles, the autonomous vehicles, the LiDAR, the cross laser radar technologies on these autonomous vehicles traveling through these cityscapes all create a toxic mix. So it increases from smart devices, anything that emits microwave radiation. You create this toxicity, this super toxic radiation. So you've got people living in cityscapes, multiple occupancy in particular, where you've got a lot of smart meters, extremely toxic. So you've got all of this technology, and people are just becoming sicker and sicker and sicker. I mean, you couldn't pick a better stealth weapon because you can't see it. So where you've got governments talking about clean air, what they're doing is it's not clean. It's absolutely filthy with radiation pollution. So we've got massive amounts of radiation pollution, and people are going to die, and they're dying now in significant enough numbers, and the medical community are just confused. They're confused. I mean, obviously the contaminants in the vaccines do play a massive part, because the nanoparticulates, tungsten was one of the main constituent parts in the flu vaccines. That increases the radiation toxicity because you get a reflection from the nanoparticles, which can actually reflect up into the terahertz range. So these people become localized antennas that basically radio frequency identity tags. And they become an antenna where they're radiating the radiation back out. I think that's one of the things that people, when they were talking about people shedding and being sick next to people who are being vaccinated, what really was happening, the radiation levels in cityscapes is that high. These people then just reflected back out, and obviously they're reflected internally as well, and consequently that's what kills them, and that's why they're dying in far larger numbers.
That's why teachers are falling dead in the middle of class too. I mean,
Yeah.
again, these towers are right in the parking lots. They're right next to the buildings. And again, these people think it's for better internet access. Let me ask you this then. I mean, how difficult then? It must be difficult to get city councils to remove these towers. Are they contracted? I mean, is there? I mean, once they go up, do they ever come down?
Yes, we've had some removed. Brighton and Hove have got one removed. We're stopping lots in the United Kingdom. We've got a district judge down south. We've got a few councillors across the country. Part of the Save Us Now movement. It was a political movement that we set up, and the reason we did it was for political cover. There's obviously a lot of things I talk about can be problematic, and if you put people into fear, alarm, and distress, that can then end up in a criminal case. Now, the fact that we are part of a political movement who can speak this truth without fear of have been arrested, because obviously it is frightening. Some of the things I talk about can be very stressful to some people. All it would take somebody to make a complaint, but the political cover allows you, it gives you the freedom to speak these absolutely shocking revelations, let's say. So that was one of the reasons for that. And not only that, it also gives people a major defence in law. See, we are under attack. We're under attack, and to have a defence, people have to understand that what they're trying to has to be their true belief. They have to understand that these government agencies, their ignorance is going to be these people's demise. So the fact that these people have to understand that what's really happening is someone's trying to kill them. The fact that they understand that as a matter of fact, right, and their true belief, that gives them a defence in law, because everybody has a right to self-defence. So once you can actually establish that you're part of a political movement that understands this, we've got all the technical details to actually confirm it, by the way. And I'm not just saying this. It's not just a belief. We can actually prove this factually in any court. It's one of the reasons why they stay away from me, Sean. I've been arrested numerous times early on in the fight. However, it didn't go very well in the courts. They've never had a good time of it, and obviously they don't want this information. I mean, I remember standing in the court when the judge once, and I pulled out the technical details, and I said, "This is a directional. This is an eye gain." And you see that little like lens thing on the top, Your Honour? And he went, "Yeah." I said, "Well, that's what you focus the radiation at the target." And I says, "That target could be an autonomous vehicle, but I says it could be a human, it could be a person." I says, "But these are weapon systems." And the judge, because you can imagine, it's in the public record now. It's in the judges know this. So you see, if they don't do something about it, they're acquiescing to it, and we all have a duty in international law. When you know of a genocide happening, you're supposed to act. And if you've got that information and you do nothing with it, you're as complicit as the people who are trying to perpetrate the crime.
Again, big picture here, but when I should say, do you think that they're going to ramp these towers into full gear to the point where people are dropping, or is it a gradual thing? Like you said, slow kill.
It's slow kill. We're currently on the slow kill now. However, they're going to have to ramp that up, because they have a target to kill a larger number. I think it's about 200 million in the US. They're going to try and pull some chaotic type of event. Let's say a Marburg, hemorrhagic fever, Ebola type, bleeding from the eyes, the nose, the skin. That can all be caused by electromagnetic radiation pollution. And so the people who've been vaccinated, I think we're going to see a few of them drop dead in the street, blood profuse. I mean, I saw pictures. I got stuff sent to us from Wuhan where there was projectile blood emission, where basically their lungs were just being eviscerated, a certain frequency, and just pull, just eviscerate the lung with these nanoparticles. Just shred the, it's just like a meat grinder, just shred them. And there was a guy on a tube train in China, in Wuhan, and he was just projectile vomiting blood. You could see his lungs had just been eviscerated. So we could see things like that. This will potentially terrorize the population, because they're going to have to pull something pretty interesting to terrorize people enough to get the next vaccine. this large number of people didn't get it. In the UK, I think some of the reason about 23 million. A lot of those were children, but there's quite a lot of people who didn't get it at all. And the number's too big. It's too big for these characters to organise. And this is the reason they're going for this, this 15-minute cityscape, so they can basically trap people into a digital prison. It's their plans just to do the kill. However they get there, there's a number of different elements to it. We are in this, what I'm going to say is an asymmetrical, unconventional, mimetic war. It's more of it's a war of words, where they have total control of the narrative in the mainstream. We have a small amount of activity in the social media space, but not near enough to counter this mimetic warfare. So they're not really concerned about it. What they've really got to go for is a large number of deaths. I think they can't pull the hard kill. See, if let's say they pulled the hard kill trigger, they're going to kill the vaccinated, right? Then there's going to be bodies, carnage, but you're going to lose police officers, military, most of the military, most of the cops, most of the nurses, most of the doctors. They're dead. They've basically got a large target on their back. They're basically going to be taken out. But that's not going to happen until they can get the other large percentage of people vaccinated. And that's falling to pieces as we speak. So they've got problems in Florida. They've got problems in Idaho. They've got problems right across most sensible parts of the USA, where people are starting to think there's something not right about how it all went down in the first place. So they've got themselves a bit of a problem. They're going to have to come back with something pretty scary, pretty terrifying to get everybody to get vaccinated, because unless they get every single person vaccinated, they've got themselves a serious problem. Because you can imagine, let's say they pull the hard kill and all these people start dropping down dead. We're having a conversation. We know what's caused it. So they've got a problem with us straight away, and every other person I speak to, because I tell them exactly what they're planning to do. And as long as there's enough of us, a few million, because our adversary, the demonic entities, and they're only a very, very small number who actually know what's going on. The rest of them are not going to survive. The lack of knowledge is going to be the critical thing here. Because obviously people are going to be terrified. I mean, I spoke to some ladies at an event in London, and they were totally against the whole COVID-19 vaccine, but they were against it because their children were vaccine injured. What they didn't know was it was a biochemical weapons program, so they could be tracked and exterminated. And I was explaining this to them, and you could see they were just totally, it was incredible. They just couldn't get their head round what I was actually saying. So they've got to see the actual contamination. That you've got to be able to show them what's in the vaccines. Now, when I spoke out about this in about 2018, we didn't even have the COVID. We didn't have the COVID-19 electron microscope images of the contaminants. We've got them now. We didn't have them then. I just knew what the plan was going to be. I'd already worked out. I knew what our strategic goal was: mass murder. And so I know the strategic goal, and also stripping people of all personal and private wealth and all private business to be taken down by 2030. So I knew that strategic plan. It's how you've got to try and work out how they're going to get to that goal. And this is how I came up with the fact that they were going to contaminate the vaccines. I mean, there was evidence of them contaminating the flu vaccine. Why would you put tungsten in the flu vaccine? Tungsten nanoparticles, because no pharmacological reason why you'd want to have tungsten. I mean, there's an argument possibly why they'd want to have like an aluminium adjuvant, but why would you want to have tungsten nanoparticle shards in a vaccine? I mean, we know from the defense industry, high explosives create nanoparticulates, and those nanoparticulates have been shown in military personnel who've died from cancers. If you go to the epicenter of the cancer, you'll find these nanoparticulates that were emissions from high explosives. And what they've actually done, they've just brought these nanoparticulates, they've been able to manufacture them and then bring them and put them into a bioweapon and then inject them into people through this whole COVID-19 malarkey nonsense and terrorize the population into taking this biochemical weapon so they can track them. So that's where we are, trying to work out exactly what their plan is. I think we know what their goal is. How they're going to go along with that is we just got to wait and see what they do. I mean, at the minute, what they're pushing is these ultra low emission zones, 15-minute cities, take down your ability to get around the country. I mean, that attack I've got no doubt what's happened in America with these, these train crashes. That's all part of their agenda to basically attack the food supply, where they can basically poison the ground, attack the food supply. We have to remember we're dealing with demonic forces. They're not bothered. They've got nothing to lose. These characters, who we're dealing with, they are what I call part of the kiddie killer torture club. So they've got absolutely nothing to lose. And unfortunately for them, they are losing because the information's starting to become more and more readily available on the internet. As every day goes by, something else comes out. What the next plan is, we'll just have to wait and see. But as soon as they come up with it, whether it be that 15-minute cityscapes, we have to then organise ourselves to stop that. And what I'm doing at the minute, I'm talking about these ultra-low emission zones. It's all to put people into electric cars so they'll be sterile, to also give them cancer and make them sick. And then you've got the radar that they require for these ultra-low emission zones that scan the environment and cause a toxicity of the air, where you charge the air 13.13 odd electron volts. So you're breathing in positively charged air. They're gassing the people in the cities. So it's not just the radiation. It's not just the radiation that actually charging the air. When you discharge positively charged air, that's an immune system suppressor, but it's also very, very damaging to the health. You've also got the temperature increase. You've got a temperature increase, which causes a raft of other issues. So even in the summer, so when it's a nice warm day, the temperature is going to increase significantly higher, or the let's say the interpretation, the feeling of a temperature increase, because you've got all these microwave radiation transmitters. The energy has to go somewhere. And unfortunately, if that energy is not being taken to ground and you're actually receiving it, you're going to get an increase in the thermal effect.
And the chemtrails play right into this.
The chemtrails are, these aerosols are actually to keep the temperature in. It's like a polytunnel cover. So as the radiation comes in, bounces off, doesn't go back to the ionosphere. It actually gets stopped at a lower space, and then it's basically, it's like putting things in a greenhouse. So that's spraying the air, keeping the greenhouse effect in. They then spray the ionospheric radiators, and you can focus it directly. We saw what happened in Turkey with these earthquakes. That's ionospheric radiators, where you can actually pour enough energy into an environment, and then you actually get it to bounce back down onto the ground, where you can actually create these earthquakes, so it can cause hurricanes, earthquakes, rain, snow, fire, and do all of that stuff. And like I said, the military have full control. We've got the documents. The defence industry have full control of weather by 2025, all weather domains by 2025. So what's all this climate change about? You've got governments across the world now. There's two elements to it. If a government aid minister or a politician doesn't know what the military are up to, then they shouldn't be in the job. If they do know what they're up to, then they're criminals and part of the criminal conspiracy to kill the people in the world. So it's one or two choices. They're either dumb enough not that they shouldn't be there, and there will be quite a few of them who are dumb enough, but there will also be others that do know. They're the real actors in this crime against us.
Yeah, it's pretty evident that they all don't have to be knowledgeable about what's going on, but if there's just enough people within those positions, then they can clearly manipulate the entire group into going along with it. In particular, if they're all ideologically the same anyway. They're just going to be the useful idiots to one another against everybody else who knows more about what's going on. What is it that, is there absolutely anything that we can do to protect ourselves from any of this beyond not taking the jabs? That's pretty evident, but
I'm always a great believer in, we win. Scripture says we win. If you read the Revelation, Isaiah, Malachi, all says we win. Consequently, I'm pretty confident that we do win. You can see the whole thing's falling to bits for them, and what's destroying it all is the truth. The word, just getting enough people in a room so you can explain this to them. I mean, everything else falls away. Their fraud. Just it's like the whole CO2 argument. I mean, you couldn't pick a more ridiculous gas to say it causes climate change. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And we've got over 1,000 climatologists saying there isn't a climate emergency. We've got, thousands and thousands of MDs coming out all over the place. You've got scientists falling over themselves to tell you the whole thing's not what we're being told it is. So we've got enough academics. We just need to get enough of the general population, and the only way we're going to get that through, some media coverage or, meetings where people come together at demonstrations, etc., where they get the right speakers to speak about this. I mean, the electric car thing. I was talking to a doctor at a hospital where a number of the nurses that watch we have a group of people in the UK called the Magneteers. They go out and they do outreach where they try and test people in the streets for the antenna. You can use a neodymium magnet if they aspirate the needle and you've got a stable antenna in the deltoid, so you can actually test them with these neodymium magnets, and if it attaches to the injection site. So we've had a number of groups going about, and a doctor had contacted me and he said, "What's it all about?" And I said, "Well, they're going to kill you." And he was like, "What?" I said, "It's a depopulation. It's what they call depopulation, I call extermination plan." And he said, you could see he was struggling with the whole, the government want you dead. They've been weaponized against you. Yeah. And he was struggling with that. I said, well, you only have to look at electric cars. And I explained the electric car, the radiation emission, the sterilization, and that helped him to grasp the idea that the government wasn't his friend and that they had been infiltrated and that there was these forces that were basically trying to drive depopulation. He got that, but the whole antenna thing and the hard kill was a little bit too difficult for him at the time. But I think the more people are exposed to, little drip pieces of this information, and once they start to structure it out, and then they can come to the conclusion that there are demonic forces that are driving this agenda who basically want you dead. I mean, it's the World Economic Forum lot. Why anybody goes there when we know that these are Nazis, it's a Nazi agenda to depopulate. They call it the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I mean, why didn't they just call it the Fourth Reich? Because that's exactly who they are. They're the Fourth Reich, and this is the Third World War that we face against these criminals.
Yeah, a lot of the boards I'm reading and the boards I pay attention to, I mean, in particular here within the last couple of days, they are ramping up the talk and the chatter about them needing another massive distraction of some kind, but not even a distraction, just an actual kill event.
Mm.
And again, that really ramped up here just within the last couple of days. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see what tricks they pull here. But it's I don't know. Back to the 5G tower thing, just very briefly. It's disgusting to know this, of course, and then you drive around, and there are some towns again that are loaded with them, and then some towns have next to zero. You can look out on a flat plain and you can see for miles and miles and you won't see any. And then you'll turn around in some areas and you're completely surrounded. And of course, they put them next to nursing homes too. And that's clearly not an accident. Answer this if you can. There has to be and you kind of did earlier, I think, but there has to be a strategic reason for where they're located and where they put them up, not just again on stoplights and trying to hide them and, make them look like a plant or make them look like a trash can. But the giant towers, I mean, is there a strategic standpoint to where they put them based on distance? I mean, does this have is there a spot where the frequency drops off and doesn't hit somebody past a particular point, or is it pretty much infinite?
Well, the problem they have in certain areas in the US, they don't have enough power, and power is the let's say the Achilles heel. They need electrical power to be, because what they do is they just take the electrical power and then they reproduce that in air. So they take it out of a cable and then they stick it in the air. So that's their main purpose. So they've got an issue in relation to that, because a lot of these transmitters, the engineering hasn't been, let's say, refined enough. So you'll find that some of these masts will self-ignite. They'll start to talk to each other because it's all about harmonics. They'll start to talk to each other. They'll start to heat up, and the next minute you'll have them burning out. And we've seen that. We've seen quite a few. Whether it be deliberate, obviously there's got to be some deliberate acts. However, we know of several where they have actually just burnt themselves out. So they burnt themselves out. I think they're going to have a serious problem with full blanket coverage of the US, because there's certain areas where there isn't any power to get to them. They'll probably back that up with the ionospheric radiators if that's what they required. But it's really incumbent on everybody to start making efforts to get this stuff removed. I mean, 4G is a telecommunications network. 5G was never that. 5G, the transmitters, the power outputs are significantly higher, minimum 100,000 times more powerful than a 4G mast. And it's due to the focality of the beams. Whereas you only have to be a distance away from a 4G mast and the radiation drops off and it's significantly less dangerous and basically cannot be weaponized. Whereas you can definitely weaponize those 5G masts. So it's extremely important that people understand the technology, do the research, and then start to act. It's about people acting against this and about building numbers. I mean, I say it all the time, knowledge and numbers is key. And unfortunately, for those that don't either get the knowledge and don't actually react against it, you won't survive. The only people that's going to come through the other end are the people on the front line who are fighting this. I've got no doubt about it. Sitting back in your armchair and hoping somebody else is going to do this for you is not any way to achieve anything. And there's too many people like that who believe that somebody else is going to do the job. Nobody's coming to save you. I keep saying that. We hear this narrative all the time. There's this group, that group, there's another group going to come. No, you need to start saving yourself. You need to get organised and start saving yourself. You need to gather numbers locally and you need to start acting and stop listening to all this nonsense about people coming to save you, because a lot of the people who are trying to come to save you could potentially be false prophets. False prophecy is going to make you sit back and hope that somebody else is going to clean up the mess. Well, I'm going to say it to everybody, it's time to clean your own mess up. This mess is our creation. We created this ourselves due to not taking too much notice of these criminals in politics, allowing these local authorities, local councillors and people just to be so self-absorbed, so criminally insane or demonic Satanist type groups that have taken over these local authorities, etc., and governments, and people sitting in politics. We really do need to start getting our act together. We used to, years ago, we had this, people were always politically motivated. I remember when I was a child, the political arguments that we used to have about this thing and that thing and the other thing. And then all of a sudden we went through this, the sort of the 70s, 80s, 90s into 2000, where you've had 40 years where people have thought, we'll just leave it to these lot. We'll just leave it up to these lot. And what's happened? We've left it up to that lot. And as well as the academic community. The academic community is basically being controlled to the fact where we've got scientists in universities who, it's like as if somebody's removed their brain completely, put it to one side and just put, fill them up with cotton wool. I mean, I was on Ulster radio with a professor from Ulster University, and he was basically telling the whole, the audience that non-ionizing radiation was nothing to concern yourself about, because there's not enough energy in this part of the spectrum to do any harm, same as what comes from the sun. So I said, well, hang on a minute. Number one, we're symbiotic with sun radiation. I can tell you now, if you get a lot of it, there's a high probability you'll get skin cancer. But I said, We're talking about something that's completely different. We're talking about man-made. So man-made non-ionizing radiation is absolutely nothing. It's like chalk and cheese. They're two completely different things. And I said, you're telling the audience here that it can't be harmful. But I said, if I was to tell people that non-ionizing radiation can cut stainless steel, you're telling them that it's the same as what's emitted from the sun. So that they extrapolate that would mean that the sun could cut stainless steel then. And he went, well, I didn't say that. Lasers are completely different. I said, no, lasers are not completely different. Lasers are man-made. They use the same spectrum and they can cut stainless steel. So I said, can you retract now what you said? Because you're telling people or giving them a false narrative. You're telling them, you're basically equating non-ionizing radiation with the symbiotic relationship between what we receive on this earth in regards to man-made, and they're two completely different things, as you know. And anyway, he basically had to retract a little bit, but this narrative is something that's it's a widely held misconception by a number of scientists. I had another scientist, he's actually on our side, and he was part of a court case, and I did somebody asked us a question about ionizing radiation, and I was explaining about how if you stack photons, you can cause ionization in a non-ionizing radiation field. I can cause ionization using sound. So if I can use it, if I can cause ionization using a sound wave, then I can definitely do it in any microwave radiation. In fact, I do it right across the spectrum. And he sent an email. There was about 50 people in the thread, and he said, there's not enough energy in that part of the spectrum. So what I did, I got a piece of, anybody can do this, by the way, if you get a couple of grapes, put them in a microwave oven and switch it on, and you can see the ionization in the plasma being emitted from a biological structure inside a microwave field. So what I did, I actually got a bit of aluminium foil, because obviously there's aluminium in these aluminium nanoparticles in some of these vaccines, and I put some of it inside the microwave oven, and I switched it on. Obviously it was blew up. I had plasma and ionization caused within the field, and I videotaped it and I sent it to them all, and I said, you know, the schoolboy physics error, right, will get people killed. These weapons are weapons for a reason. These non-ionizing radiation weapons, the military have been using for many, many years, targeted acquiring people, targeted individuals, dissidents, people that the government just don't like. That's why they don't want people to know these developments, and that's why they try to keep it secret. And where the whole thing came into the public domain was Havana, where they tried to say it was an ultrasound weapon, which it wasn't. And now they've actually had to admit that were microwave radiation weapons that caused irreparable neurological damage, no different to the PTSD that a lot of veterans suffer, where they have actually got a brain injury. It's not a psychological trauma. I'm not saying there's people out there that it's not a psychological trauma that they suffer, but if you were to analyze these guys, you would see that there is some type of physical injury to the, some physical injury. So it's one of those subjects to try to keep hidden, and the reason why they're trying to keep it hidden is because of what they've actually installed in your streetlights. So non-ionizing radiation, the LED streetlights, toxic to all life. AMA, Medical Association, like I said, the 2016 report. We're talking about the toxicity of environments due to councils going along with the UN Resilient Cities agenda and this climate change nonsense. The whole climate change thing is to bring technologies into your cityscapes to harm you, whether it be electric cars, autonomous vehicles, autonomous weapons platforms. 5G is a mesh network. For me to deploy any lethal autonomous weapons platform, so you see the little dogs walking around and the what we call laws. To deploy laws in a cityscape, you need a mesh network. You've got to have these antennas, and so people now know the Achilles heel of these weapon systems. So when you see the Terminator type robots, Not that they look like that, by the way. Most of them are track with maybe machine guns attached to them, etc. So when they start coming into your cityscape, remember it's the antenna on the top of the streetlight that's actually allowing it to track itself through the cityscape. So you know where to how to protect yourself from that. These things cannot operate without having a mesh network around them where they can geolocate themselves.
You've pretty much already hit on it, but if you can speak a little bit about the scheme to get these into schools and around universities and why those two hotspots, and I mean that literally, I mean they're giant Wi-Fi hotspots just cooking these children and the people who work inside on a constant basis. Speak a little bit about what you know regarding all of that.
There's a network called YGig, and YGig was a 60 gigahertz. It's free spectrum. Whenever this industry allowed free spectrum, always expect there's something nefarious about it. So 2.4 gigahertz. So your deck phone, your Wi-Fi, mainly 2.4 gigs. 2.4 gigs we know causes diabetes, so we've got diabetes epidemic from the radiation. 60 gigahertz is as much use. I mean, from a telecommunications network, it would be pretty useless. The reason for that is because at that frequency, it attenuates in air, mainly in the oxygen molecule. And if I was to pour enough energy in there, so the oxygen molecule acts as a dielectric, very similar to the grape in a 2.4 gigahertz field of microwave oven. If I then cause, and I can actually create a modulated frequency on the top of that, which will disassociate the molecular bond. Now, I was sent an image of an antenna design that was hanging on a telegraph pole in somewhere in the USA, and it was someone from cyber, pretty senior in the US administration in cyber security, sent us this image and said, "You're the guy to go to for this 5G. Can you tell what this is?" Because this particular individual had been in the defense industry and had been in the military and never seen an antenna like it. Now, what was quite interesting, I'd invented a molecular reactor to break carbon dioxide as part of a project. We couldn't get it funded anyway. The feasibility study never happened. We did do we did have a look at it, and we did theoretically put the whole invention, because I invented this thing. However, the design of the invention required this radiator type structure, which would increase temperature, suck this carbon dioxide up through the top of this radiator, and basically break the carbon dioxide. So that was roughly the plan. Anyway, I got this image of this piece of equipment hanging on a telegraph pole in the USA. And this particular person asked me, "What is it? This is part of 5G. What is it?" I went, "It's a molecular reactor." I says, "But I know that part of the free spectrum, they're going to give you 60 gigahertz. Now, if I was to use that radiator and use 60 gigahertz and modulate it at a certain pulse modulated frequency at 60 gigs in the spectrum, I'm going to pour energy into the oxygen molecule. I'm going to disassociate the covalent bond, and then I'm going to get oxygen molecules drop out the top." Now, we saw these hanging around in, roundabout schools, etc., hanging on telegraph poles at a low height, nothing about two or three meters up. And so if I was to have this particular piece of equipment where I turn it up, 60 gigahertz part of the spectrum, modulate the frequency, disassociate the bond, I'm going to pour oxygen atoms out of the top of the reactor, and they would attach with oxygen molecules, which would cause O3. O3 will kill all biological life at 50 parts per million. Now, this is why I know there's more to this from a spiritual aspect, because I'd actually invented this piece of equipment. So it was absolutely bizarre, because I didn't know they were going to use a molecular reactor in the 5G network. I knew about the 60 gigahertz, but I mean, you can just spray that. I could spray that into air, and I would cause this O3 issue in and around the antenna. But this piece of equipment was actually built just like normal. If you look at if you look at radiators in the home, where you switch your radiator on, your normal central heating system, so you've got this radiator, it increases, the temperature increases, and you start to take the air through the bottom of the radiator. It's just normal fluid dynamics, where you get cool coming in the bottom and then you get heat coming out the top. If I've got an electrical radiator, so an emitter that can emit it in around the spectrum of 60 gigahertz, and I pull the air up through the bottom of the radiator and pour out the top, 60 gigahertz pulse modulated frequency, and I dissociate the oxygen, the covalent bond, I've got oxygen atoms coming out the top. Well, the first thing they're going to do is attach with other O2, give you O3, and gas you. So this was the equipment. Now, I don't know what happened to that, but they were also putting this what's called Y-gig in schools. Now, Y-gig in schools are going to gas the children. The fact that we spoke about it a lot, and I covered it quite a lot when I did have a larger social media footprint. I mean, most of my social media has been taken down, but I spoke about this quite extensively, and I believe the reason it wasn't used extensively, we know there was some sickness in schools. We know that kids did get sick. However, I think they were tests and they didn't actually carry it through because there was too many people pointing to the fact of this 60 gigahertz equipment that had actually been installed. So it was a serious problem for them. And this is one of the things with this mimetic warfare. We can beat them by just speaking about it. We can stop some of these attacks by just speaking about them. So it's really important that, getting information out to the larger group. Then what happens? They then go, well, we can't use it because if we do, they've already spoke about it, and then it's going to create more and more people who are injured by it. They start to go, well, we spoke about this at this time. It's happened here. This is what's causing it, and it validates the information that we're putting out there and gives us a lot more credence.
Let me ask you this too, and this is kind of related, but a bit out there, or it just kind of a different subject to some extent, but certainly regarding populations as well. And of course, I think the 5G ties in also because it has to do directly with proximity. I was driving around the other day and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And what I was seeing were massive apartment buildings going up. Now, I don't know if this is occurring where you live, but I'm seeing all this new construction of all these new giant apartment buildings. And again, when I say apartment buildings, I'm talking they're kind of nice looking, but they're huge. I mean, they are 4 stories high. Now I'm driving past this and I'm saying to myself, who in the hell is going to be living here? Because we're seeing people drop dead everywhere. There's for hire signs everywhere. People aren't working because they're sick and they're dying. Clearly the population is taking a toll right now. So I'm saying to myself, who are they going to be moving in to these particular places? Do the construction companies that are building these, assuming that they're legit construction companies, do they know what's happening? Or do they just have absolutely no clue? So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, in particular when it comes to 5G and the proximity stuff too?
I think the moving people out of some of the older properties into some of these newer properties where they've got a lot of smart devices, smart meters in particular, that's going to be pretty helpful for the kill. So let's say the word to move people out into cityscapes off the land. They need people off the land into the city for this mass. They're basically concentration camps. So there's that aspect, but there's also the other aspect about keeping people busy. If we've got these construction guys, we've got normal young fit men who are working on these projects, and just keep them focused, keep paying them lots of money, make sure they're focused, to make sure that they're not looking or spending time on the internet and realizing what's really going on behind it. So I think it's part of a deflector, but it's also part of bringing these better pieces of real estate into cityscapes, so that when they start to drive people off the land, there'll be some thing that happens where they say, look, you've got to come off the land. We need to get you into this cityscape for this extermination plan. I mean, obviously, they're not going to tell them that. They didn't tell the Jews or anybody who they were taking prisoner during the Second World War. I mean, the whole narrative to people in Germany was, we need to protect you. We need to protect you from the mob. And what we need to do is put you on these cattle trucks and take you to these camps where you can be protected. That was the whole narrative then, and it's exactly going to be the narrative now. But the concentration camp's going to be the city, and the city's already littered with this radiation emission, which even if they didn't use the hard kill, it's going to kill you, within a period of time, be due to the radiation emissions. And you see, these radiation emissions, people just can't see it. If you can't see it, you can't smell it. They have difficulty visualizing the fact that they're in a toxic environment. And when I was in London, we were measuring, I was at King's Cross Station, and we were measuring about 5,000 or 6,000 millivolts. So go back to the Council of Europe 1815 resolution, the maximum they say is 200. So I'm hitting like 5,000 and 6,000. People are going to die. People are being microwaved to death in their own cities. I was at Trafalgar Square. I was measuring 8,000 to 9,000 millivolts. So well over what the international courts have said is safe. It's not safe. 200 millivolts isn't safe. I would have said below 30. You need to be in around or below 30 millivolts per meter squared. You do not want anything higher than that. And we're seeing, minimums 400s, 400 and 500. I mean, I was in even in the countryside now, where they're putting these masts up, you're starting to see, increases. It's all part about killing the pollinators. Pollinators are affected at around about 30 millivolts. You can disrupt bees. You'll start to affect bees. They're geolocating systems, birds. It's a total kill. It's total environmental kill.
I've seen less birds this year than any year before.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing the same. Yep. Yeah.
It's awful.
It's awful. Yeah. Well, it's a total kill. I mean, we don't see any butterflies. You don't see butterflies, daddy longlegs, beetles, where we used to see a lot of ladybirds. You don't see any ladybirds anymore. Earwigs, all gone. You don't see any infestation of any type. I mean, obviously, ants are pretty robust in relation to radiation. I think there's scorpions are pretty robust with radiation, but your spider population's not so good. We're just seeing a massive ecological catastrophe, and you can visualize it.
Yeah. Anything you want to add before we go here? I mean, this has been awesome, man. The audience is going to eat this up.
Just, the most important thing to say to people, I mean, some of the things I talk about are pretty horrifying. However, the most important thing is to remember we win.
Just to wrap this up, again, you were just briefly talking about what people can do. Of course, getting the message out there, educating yourselves, of course, listening to different people on different programs and learning about all this, and then bringing it to city councils, board members, you name it, and see what they do. And of course, if they don't do anything, vote them out or vote somebody in who's more knowledgeable about the subject, I suppose.
Remove them and arrest them. If they are criminals or criminally complicit in this, then in the United Kingdom, we have the right to arrest without warrant. A civilian can make an arrest without warrant. They know that, we know that, and what we need a number of people who are going to make these arrests, because unfortunately the system, if you haven't got the local sheriff's office, I think there's a far better opportunity in the USA, and especially if you look at what Dr. David Martin is doing, talking to a number of US marshals, etc., in relation to what's went on. If they don't, let's say, either investigate or cover this off, then obviously people are going to have to go and arrest them. It's as simple as that. We cannot allow this major attack on our countries by these nefarious actors. We've got people within government. We heard about George Soros. He's paid off a significant number of, let's say, the local attorneys, where you have people in authority who are basically ignoring the whole thing. It's inexplicable, and unfortunately, they won't survive what's coming anyway. I mean, do they think for 1 minute that these elites are going to need anybody in these local authorities if the population's dead? I mean, it's ridiculous. These lunatics are going along with this for lots of different reasons, and don't realise that they're actually putting themselves in total jeopardy And unfortunately, well, a lot of them will have had the vaccine. A lot of them had the vaccine, and they can be switched off, terminated at any time.
Are you on Gab by chance?
I'm on Gab. I've got a Gab account. I'm trying to think what's my Gab account called. There's a second Gab. Yeah, Gab. It's Mark Steele channel. So it's gab.com, Mark Steele channel, one word. I've got a Telegram account, which is the same Mark Steele channel. I've got a Twitter account. I'm just getting a Twitter account open there. That's quite interesting. And that is Mark Anthony ST20. So if anybody wants to get on my Mark Anthony account, but I would suggest anybody wants information to go to the Save Us Now. So it's saveusnow.org.uk. If you need any help, any technical advice, any understand getting smart meters must get removed. You need to remove them. They're part of weapons program. They can set fire to your home. They can set fire to the appliances in your home. So you need to get rid of them. We can get rid of them. Obviously, they cause a biological assault, sterilisation in particular. We've got the EU STOA report just came out, 2021, which shows electromagnetic radiation causes sterilisation. That's a reason to get it removed. Apart from the fact that they're nefarious, they're spying on you as we speak, and they can see everything that you're doing, and they can switch you off from your power source remotely. Not only can they switch you off, they can change your billing. So they can change the billing at any time. What a fantastic business. You put a few million smart meters and they just add an extra $5 or $10 a week to a bill. Nobody would be able to tell. You can't tell whether they've been whether there's an extra $10 on. You can't argue with the point either because they're not. They can't be interrogated. Consequently, it could be giving you any meter reading. So you can imagine the government short of a few £1,000,000, they just stick an extra $10 on everybody's smart meter bill, and they're doing that as we speak. I mean, gas is currently trading internationally just over $2 for a million British thermal units. In 2008, it was 14. So it's 7 times less or thereabouts today. I mean, obviously it fluctuates daily, but it's thereabouts. So it's 7 times less than what it was in 2008. And you're being told that it's absolutely stratospheric. And the fact of the matter is, you're being lied to by your mainstream media and by your politicians to fund the chemtrail. I mean, that chemtrailing plan, they've got jets in the air 24 hours a day spraying this crap all over the place. I mean, that must be costing not billions but trillions. Anywhere in the world you go, you look up, you see these chemtrails for the ionospheric radiators to keep the temperature, and they've got to keep the temperature in because if people work out that's getting pretty cold, the whole climate change thing falls to pieces. So we need to look up, we need to get the eyes from the ground and start looking up and checking people and saying, well, what is it? What is this all about? It's all in the COP agreements. So these climate emergency meetings, they have the meetings. They talk about geoengineering, how they're going to spray and block out the sun. Well, what they're really doing is they're spraying and keeping the temperature in. Total disingenuous, and politicians who go along with it are part of a criminal conspiracy to kill. You just keep dropping those truth bombs all the time, and that dam's absolutely breaking. And we can see it's breaking. And where you get results in the courts, nobody intentionally wants to commit suicide and die. You keep doing as you're told today, I'll tell you now, it is a death sentence. You will die, make no mistake about it. Doing as you're told by these demonic, satanic cult members, that's who they are, that demonic cult members, what I call the kiddie killer torture club. That's who are telling you what to do. You take any notice of them and believe as your end is nigh.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.